Welcome back to The Pulse, and Kofi J is still here with me, but let's tell you why Kofi J is here. Stakeholders are divided over President John Mahama's promise to run his government with just 60 ministers. Mr. Mahama, in the lead up to the 2024 presidential elections, promised to run a lean government to ensure a more efficient and effective system of governance while protecting the public purse. Now, speaking earlier on News Desk, a political scientist at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asante, said President John Mahama can actually run his government with 19 ministers, with each appointee playing double role. Here is what he had to say.
Yes, I agree. If we place a cap, we find a certain number which is fine. Well, we should do that so that we reduce cost in this area. I have just put down my 19 ministries, and I want to...
Please share them with me. I'm curious.
Them. 1, finance. 2, interior. 3, defense. 4, trade. 5, information. 6, local government. 7, attorney general. 8, education. Youth. 9, roads. 10, 11, gender. 12, health. 13, foreign affairs. 15, labor. 16, chieftaincy. 17, agric. 18, youth and sports. And I still have one more. We can do that. We can do that.
You still have one more left.
So,
yeah,
what of the regional ministers?
The regional ministers are going to be in here. We are going to select 16. So a minister will hold 2 portfolios. He's a minister of state and a regional minister. Yes, because we've seen that. Remember Kufuor's time, there was a problem, and Mr. Deborah, Deborah was made a minister, and he was also supervising a region and all that. It's done. We can do that, and then the civil servants will support us. 19, no deputy minister, and then we are good to go.
But local governance expert Andrews Bediako disagrees. He says the promise, though feasible, will hurt the grassroots and may cause job losses at the local front.
What kind of savings are we talking about here? Is it about salaries? Because when you scrap these ministries, all the technocrats, all the civil servants who work in these ministries, you cannot sack them. So their salaries will be paid by all means. So are we talking about savings or the money that we use in paying the minister or his deputies? Is that the savings that we are talking about? Because these monies that we are talking about, when the ministry is removed or is scrapped, definitely these monies will be given to the emerging ministry that you have created. And those monies are going to be used. So I don't see where we are talking about savings. Because when you take, let's say, Minister of Foreign Affairs, for example, away, and you leave Minister of Local Government, there are people who are supposed to be working, or there are people who were working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they are technocrats. You cannot sack them. So the savings that we are talking about, what kind of savings are we talking about? That you are preparing to go to opposition. I tell you,
so you are looking at the political angle of it.
Yes, because, my dear, you see, if you are a politician, what you need is that you need power to implement your policies. If you don't have power, you can't implement. If you have all the good ideas, intentions and purposes, whatever, and you don't have power, you can't implement it. So the aim of every politician is to get power. And if you want to step on toes, because Doctor is an academician, I understand him, but looking at the kind of politics that we do in Ghana and the institutions that we have in Ghana, I don't think we have gotten to a point that we think we need 90 ministries to run this country. I don't think so.
Well, my colleague Kofi J is still in studio. I know that a lot of people are quite excited about, and it will be mostly even the outgoing government who will be excited that, well, let's see how you're able to cut it. Because then the belief of if somebody voted for you, they should be paid back in a certain form of way, rewarding sort of. And so who is going to be out of it and who is also going to be on the list? Generally, before you even go to your table and bring us the numbers, which one of them do you agree? The governance expert or the political analyst, Dr. Asante, or Andrew Bediako? Who says that?
Yeah, I think at the situation we are in at the moment, I'll side with Dr. Asante because it's about cost cutting. And we should remember that the John Dramani Mahama administration has made a number of tax scrapping policies, which means that a gaping hole will be created. So you need to find a substitute to fill that. It does not necessarily mean that you should go and create new tax handles or overtax certain people to fill that gap if you really want to scrap the taxes. It could also be about expenditure rationalization. How do you cut certain expenditures that you think that are weedy and you do not need them? How do you cut that to save for the space you've created? So I think that looking at the fact that we are simply under an IMF program and government cannot take the unilateral decision of scrapping certain things, and would always have to find alternative. It would be good to do some savings on this governance side and use that as a token to do the negotiation with the IMF. Because if you listen to the finance minister nominee, Dr. Kesio Ataforsen, they simply want to extend the current IMF program to maybe about 2027 or 2028. Okay. The NPP administration did it, and we do not know how that is going to be. It simply means that if you do that, it will come with new austerity measures, it will come in new conditions. How do you feel in that? So at the point where we are, we need certain cost-cutting, exercise or policies. So I will side with Dr. Asante more than possibly with the other people who spoke on the issue.
Okay, let's get into it. 60 ministries. What do you have for me?
Well, so I think that we have to make it clear. President John Dramani Mahama did not promise to scrap any ministry.
Okay.
He has also not promised to scrap or to merge any ministries. What he has promised is that he is going to operate a lean government, which they interpret as a government that will not have more than 60 ministers and deputy ministers.
Okay.
So we are asking ourselves, look, why would John Dramani Mahama choose to run such a lean government? The notion is to cut costs, right? So if you're cutting costs, then what is the cost at the moment, or what's the current cost that John Dramani Mahama is looking at and is horrified? It's so horrific that he wants to cut it to make some saving. And that is the figure you have on the big wall, 84 billion Ghana cedis. That is what it takes to run the 27 ministries that we have in the country, from the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs to the ministry, possibly the most expensive ministry, the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
These...
do you know that I would have thought, not to catch, I would have thought that with the introduction of the they subsidizing or they taking the cost of dialysis would have ballooned the Ministry of Health and all of that.
In fact, maybe when we go to that aspect, you will see that the Ministry of Health is also not that far away from the Ministry of Education. But what we are saying is that it is this figure that the NDC has seen. This is what we picked from the 2024 budget, trying to understand how much it costs to actually run the 27 ministries. Remember that at a point in time, we had more than 30 ministries, different institutions being ministries. And President Akufo-Addo said, look, some of them are done serving their purpose, so we have to merge and scrap some of them, bringing the number down to 27. So the big number is 84 billion Ghana cedis. That is the cost at stake. That is the cost that John Dramani Mahama is looking, and he's asking himself, how is he going to bring this down? So what we did was that, we've been analyzing all the ministries, but we were also looking at the top 5 ministries that are very expensive to actually run. Yeah, and there you have it. The Ministry of Education, we've spoken about it, is the most expensive ministry to actually run because of its angles and what you do in there. The free SHS program is in there. There's also the basic education in the tertiary. And mind you, the Ministry of Education employs one of the highest civil servants and public servants, teachers. It has a number of workers, so its wage bill is very, very big. Usually, it is the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health combined, GMA and whether or not or whatever, when they come together to say that they are going on strike, that is when you see the government really working. That is why they are the 2 most expensive ministries to run in the country.
So when you say expensive to run, you mean the day-to-day activities.
So what was their budget?
It's not even that the things that they do.
They do necessarily.
Necessarily. Yeah. It is just the building in there, the people that walk in and out, the people that do the day-to-day work in there. That's the budget allocation.
That's the budget. So usually it will comprise of the compensation of the employees there, cost of goods and services, because definitely they will need stationery, they will need so many things. And then also if they are doing any capex. But ordinarily, usually you will never find the expenditure line item for capex really being realistic in most of the ministries. It actually depend on grants and what have you to be able to do them. But majority of the money you see, or significant component of the money you see on the screen, goes into paying the workers who are in the ministry or who work for the ministry directly or indirectly. And so third position definitely will be the interior ministry, because security is very, very important. The interior ministry, there's also the police service in there, right? So you have a number of the services under the interior ministry. So I was not surprised when we ran the module and the Ministry of Interior was third. You need about 8.4 billion Ghana cedis to run that ministry. You also have roads and highways, possibly because of capex, right? And some of the equipment they use, all of that. So if it's at fourth position, I'm not so surprised. And the cousin of the Interior Ministry definitely will be the Defense Ministry, being number 5. So these are the 5 most expensive ministries to run according to the data that we got from the 2024 budgets from the finance and ministry. So if Mahama is looking at rationalizing, cutting costs or anything, he will be looking at some of these ministries. But also, I mean, the ministries actually exist based on a certain, purpose, right? There are ministries that are supposed to be for just administrative purposes. And there are actually 5 of such ministries. So if you are actually looking at combining or merging a certain ministry, you need to look at their similarities. How compatible are they? How can you, merge them? Some of them may exist in different, portfolios, but merging becomes possible. But predominantly, if you really want to merge, you look at it whether they fall under the same bracket, right? So for administrative purposes, there are 5 ministries that have been set up for administrative purposes, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Finance Ministry itself is predominantly for administrative purposes, to local government, to Ministry of Information, to Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. Now, if you ask me, these 5, right? I mean, one of the guests was actually asking us about cost and savings and what have you. The reason why savings is important is because Mahama wants to cut costs, to be able to find ways and means to also scrap other tax handles, because just like we said, when you're going to the IMF, you don't go empty-handed, you go with an alternative, right? So I want us to do this. This 5 ministries we have on the big wall, I don't know which one you think that we can actually merge, but I think that maybe we may see the Ministry of Chieftaincy later on in another bracket. But I think that you can actually merge the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural with the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. I don't see why there should be a local government ministry without chieftaincy, because it's actually the chiefs that make up the local areas. It's where it starts. So if you really want to merge them, then I think that you can merge these 2, right?
So, as you've said, he has not promised to merge any ministry, as you have indicated. So he's looking to run 60 ministers. Currently, do we know how many ministers that are run already?
Yes, there are about 86 or 85 ministers that the president, former President Akufo-Addo actually worked with in his second term, right? Okay.
It's good we don't know the fact as to whether he's going to be merging, because then it will mean that he's only saving us the payment of a little over 20 ministers.
Exactly.
And that will not amount to that 84 billion that we're hoping to save. We're hoping to save that 84 billion if there are some measures, some confluence. Yes. Now, if we're going to be merging anyway, your promise as well is also on the 60 ministers. What happens to the chief directors and all of these people that are under?
Exactly. I mean, in fact, if you go into the cost of the compensation of the employees of almost all who belong to the ministries, you will see that it is the salaries and wages and salaries that is the main problem, right?
Right.
Not just the minister. The minister sometimes is just 1, 2 people, right? The minister and his deputy. But the ministry itself, operating that ministry itself can be a bit problematic in terms of cost. Because if you put out a ministry, you need to appoint a chief director. You need to set up the records unit. There should be other departments, right? And you have to budget for all of these ministries. They need to get vehicles, they need to get drivers, they need to get cleaners. There has to be a building, electricity costs. We all know how ECG was, fighting some of the ministries, how they should pay their lights and all of it. So it's not just about the minister. That's why we are talking about saving, because if Mahama is just reducing the number of ministers without it affecting the cost, the current cost, and I think that it is just a cost-90 job.
Okay.
So if you are reducing the ministers, it has to actually reflect on cost-cutting measures. You need to really reduce the cost of the current 84 billion Ghana cedis that are required to operate all the 27 ministries. In fact, we've not even added the 16 regional ministers.
Yeah, which is also a debate.
Exactly.
Does it include the 60 ministers? Does it include the regional ministers? They are called ministers, but are they ministers as well?
Yes.
And so, okay, you were on your way to trying to merge, top of your head. So you're thinking that Ministry of Local Governments, Decentralization and Rural there's something,
right?
Rural Development, yes, is merged with what?
It should be merged with Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. I think that both should not stay, because we already have National House of Chiefs, right? So I don't see why you should have a different ministry which should not be under the Ministry of Local Government.
This ministry, I'm actually even surprised, is running on 2.61 as a budget, because if I understand what governments usually will say, we want to decentralize resources. When we have a policy, the major concern is how do we trickle it down, which means that if I look at the value chain, it will be a lot of, because you don't just jump from the top to the down. And that's why we have had many people complaining that everything is centralized. Though they are saying they are operating a decentralization system, everything is still centralized and you don't get to feel it at the bottom here. And so I'm actually surprised. I was thinking that would have a lot more budgets allocated to it. But I can see why you would ask that we merge these two.
Yeah.
Then the information in Parliament.
Oh, information definitely should go back to its old marriage. Ministry of Information and Communication should be merged, right? The two of them should not sit alone, because, I mean, just look at the budget for Ministry of Information. It's around 70 million Ghana cedis, right? In billion terms, 0.268, right? But just looking at it, you see that this is for administrative purpose.
Yeah.
So you can definitely merge it with the Ministry of Communication. And I know you know the Ministry of Communication building is a very fantastic place, very nice that can house the Ministry of Information. But you see, as well.
If you're looking to also double the roles of people, it means that Kofi J, fantastic man. We've had him in the morning on desk. We were having him today on the pulse. We'd have him definitely at some point before the day would end, which means that you can double to do certain things. So there'll be no point in separating the two, which means that some heads must be cut.
Yeah, I mean, then that brings back the conversation that maybe the current government statistician wanted to have about matching the output of some of the public and civil servants with their pay. That sometimes you have some of these people who go to work. I'm not saying all of them, right? I mean, they work really hard. But there's an argument, or there's a school of thought that says that their productivity or their output versus what their remuneration is not actually equal. So if you are merging some of them, then it simply will mean that you also need to top up in terms of the works that others will already do. But for me, I think that there shouldn't be anything like the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. It shouldn't be a ministry that exists on our books or the books of the Finance Ministry at the moment. You need about 9 million Ghana cedis to run it. Just by looking at it on the cost side, you could see that this is not even a ministry that we should have even set up in the first place. I simply do not understand why we have parliamentary service, we have a whole arm of government for legislature, and we have a Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. I simply do not know what that ministry does. So I don't think it should be merged with anything. It should simply be scrapped. And that 9 million Ghana cedis that we spend almost every year should be saved there. Now, there are also other ministries that are set up for economic purposes, right? And there are 8 of such ministries, and it costs us in total 7.7 billion Ghana cedis to run all these 8 ministries. I want us to quickly take a look at them. Food and agriculture as one ministry. There's also another ministry called fisheries and aquaculture development. Definitely, you can't have a ministry of food and agriculture and have another ministry for fisheries and aquaculture. Combine the two.
That's what a balance.
Yeah, I mean,
if I buy the grains here, I must get the protein.
Exactly.
Anyway.
They are all of the same, feather. So why do you have to separate them? Lands and natural resources, I think, should stay the same. Ministry of Trade and Industry stay the same. Tourism and Arts and Culture stay the same. Energy possibly will also stay the same. So for economic purposes, you could see that all these 8 ministries here are so important to stand alone, maybe apart from fisheries and aquaculture, which needs to go back to its parent ministry, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Just by doing that, if you're able to take this, I know definitely you need to add more people in terms of the labor to the Ministry of Agriculture, but we should be able to save something when we merge.
They can take them still from the Ministry of Fisheries and Agriculture, so
exactly
they just slash them.
Yeah, you don't need a minister for that. And I was actually saying that, I mean, if you merge the two, you definitely would have some savings somewhere.
Of course.
You would definitely have some savings somewhere, because we were doing the costing for the free level 100s, right?
Yes.
And we saw that it is not even so expensive to run that policy compared to the free SHS, because you need about 400 or 600 million Ghana cedis to run it. So if Mahama really needs money, and at the moment, I was saying that this is the first time the NDC administration is tasting governance or tasting power without the flavor of the bond market. There's no bond market at the moment. Their only local source of financing is Treasury bill. They've never been at this point before. It was actually started under the Akufo-Addo administration, where they did a DDEP and the bond market actually collapsed. Now, John Dramani Mahama is faced with just one source of local capital, Treasury bills. And we all know that when inflation decides to come down, you definitely would have to cut the rates. You can't keep the rates so attractive that all the banks want to borrow to government. If you do that, you are actually stifling the economy. So definitely, just by having that side alone, Mahama should know that fiscal, space is not available at the moment. So whatever he has to do to cut some of the expenditure, he needs to cut them. There are also some of the ministries that are for infrastructure purposes, right? So Ministry of Sanitation, Water Resources, definitely you should know that the next line, Ministry of Works and Housing, the two should be married. I think that's, yes, because when you're talking about, most of the time when you're talking about flooding and what have you, we go to the Works and Housing Ministry talking about drainage and all of that. So the two should be merged. I don't see why we should have sanitation and water resources that takes about almost more than $500 million Ghana cedis of
Kofi, is this your table that is making me understand why I'm always getting it wrong? Because there is roads and highways. There's railways development before the transport.
I don't understand. All these three should be under the in fact, there was even another one called aviation. So there were one ministry, plenty.
You can just stretch it and have aviation stay by itself, right?
Well, aviation is no longer there. There's no Ministry of Aviation.
You can. If that one existed and on its own only, and then you merged transports, railways, and well, aviation is still a mode of transport.
Yeah.
So I can understand.
It should just be Ministry of Transport, and then there should have department that will take care of
all these
highways, because there's already a highways authority. So I don't see why we should have Ministry for Roads and Highways. Maybe there was a thinking that went into it. But I think that if you are able to merge all the three, there will definitely be some sort of savings that we will be able to enjoy. And sanitation and works and housing should be together. They shouldn't be separated. For social purposes, there are 9 ministries that are supposed to, definitely the most expensive ministry to run is also there, 30 billion Ghana cedis, Ministry of Education. There's no perfect pairing in this mix. But it means you need to take chieftaincy and religious affairs back to its local government, take it to local government and have that combination there. Employment, labor and labor relation, I think I don't know, but I think that can stay the same. Gender and social protection should stay the
Now
same.
there,
Ministry of Health should
affirmative action is now a law. And the concerns about how it's being implemented is what people are worried about. I expect that this budget, 2.39, that was allocated for the gender, children, and social protection, existed when the affirmative action had not, it was a bill.
Yeah,
now
this was actually the 2024 budget. So
yeah,
we expect that
this
year
it should,
maybe
it should
about,
be inclusive, and let us see how.
About 2.5 billion Ghana cedis to run.
Am I being a woman here? Anyway, Kofi, thank you so much. Do you have any more thing to show me?
No, I think that in summary, if we are able to add all the savings that we spoke about, I must just emphasize that Mahama has not promised to scrap any ministry. But if he's able to do some of these things, merge some of the ministries, take bold decisions to make sure that this is costing me a lot, I don't need it, let it go. He should be able to save about 3 billion Ghana cedis from this exercise. Okay,
I think you have your last slide. Maybe.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely the ones that are for public safety. Yes, I think that here too there's some sort of savings to be done. 4 ministries costing about 14.4 billion. So protecting public safety in 2024 was expected to cost the country 14.4 billion. So if you see the police people running around with their motor and people directing traffic,
this one.
It is 14.4 billion. Everything, I mean, including the Attorney General's office, defending the country when there's, judgment deaths and what have you. So it costs about 14.4 billion Ghana cedis to protect the public. But I think that in here too, you can do some merging. I was thinking, national security and interior should be one.
Defense definitely on its own.
Yes, defense on its own, but national security and interior, if possible, should be one. And I think that with that, you can also save some, because just look at it. Interior Ministry alone, 8.34 billion is expected because you pay the police people, you pay the fire service people. There's national security, 1.16 billion. Definitely, if you do the merging and cut certain things, some savings will be done there.
Kofi, you're a champion. Thank you so much. Now, I'll just draw from your security points where you're landing, and then let's show you the green letter that we're going to be seeing very often since the president started working in his office. So he's been releasing the statement to Dr. Dampare, and it will be on your screen, and let's show you now. It says that Office of the President, and dated the 10th of January 2025, to the Inspector General of Police, Ghana Police Service, and to Dear Dr. Dampare, request for immediate investigation into the death of 8 Ghanaians during the 2020 and the 2024 general elections. I have been instructed by His Excellency John Mahama to formally request your office to initiate immediate investigations into the tragic deaths of Ghanaian citizens during the 2020 and the 2024 general elections. These incidents, which occurred in various parts of the country, have left a lasting scar on our democratic process. It is imperative that justice is served for the victims and their families. Now, it goes on to say that to ensure the investigations are comprehensive and transparent, we respectfully propose the following. 1, establishment of a dedicated investigative task force. And here's what they'll be doing. Form a special task force within the CID to focus solely on these cases, ensuring undivided attention and efficient handling of this matter. 2, collaborate with witnesses and families. Conduct thorough interviews with eyewitnesses, victims, families, and other relevant individuals who may provide crucial information. And 3, review of electoral security arrangements. Investigate the role and actions of security personnel deployed at the affected polling stations to determine their involvement or oversight. And finally, it says that use of forensic evidence, employ advanced forensic techniques to analyze any physical evidence from the crime scenes, including bullet casting, weaponry, and other materials. Well, it actually goes on to give you the number 5, saying that collaboration with electoral and civic bodies. work with Electoral Commission and other relevant agencies to review reports from the 2020 and 2024 elections for additional context. And to maintain public trust and ensure transparency, we kindly request periodic updates on the progress of the investigation. This will help to keep stakeholders informed and assure the public of your commitment to uncovering the truth. We're confident in the competence and professionalism of the Criminal Investigations Department and trust that your efforts will yield the necessary results to bring justice to the victims and their families while preserving the integrity of Ghana's democratic process. We assure you the ultimate support should you require any additional support or information from us. Yours sincerely, with a signature, Callistus Mahama, who's the Secretary to the President, and also his attention to the Vice President and the Chief of Staff. The letter has been duly received, as you can see on your screen. But you're watching the Pulse. We will well, let's bring you this on before we go for a break. Now, President John Dramani Mahama has directed his executive secretary to formally write to Inspector General of Police, IGP, to request an update on the status of investigations into the deaths that occurred during the 2020 and the 2024 elections. And that's the statement that we brought to you on the green paper. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be back shortly.